I'm Tony Hazzard, and I'm proprietor of Sandburne Vegetarian Guesthouse here in Keswick on Chestnut Hill. Why did I decide to be vegetarian? Well, I was born and brought up a carnivore very much, and enjoyed my steaks and whatnot. And prior to a teaching career, I did work in some hotels, and on one occasion, with the last hotel I worked in, just south of Windermere, uh, the whole brigade of chefs were in one morning when I walked into the kitchen, and they just had a delivery of all their meat, which they brought in on the hoof, and the chefs were just doing the butchery, all on the floor of the kitchen, and that decided me. There was venison or deer becoming venison, and wild boar, and that was it, really. So that was one part of how I became vegetarian. But also, I had already at that point met Jan, my future wife, who was a lifelong vegetarian, and who was the daughter of Don and Dorothy Watson. Don, who was the founder of the Vegan Society nationally and globally, actually. He founded it along with his wife in 1944 when they were living in Leicester. Originally, there were a group of like-minded people who really wanted to establish a support group for vegetarians who no longer wished to consume dairy products and eggs. I understand that he approached the Vegetarian Society, of which there were members at the time, to see if the Veggie Society would support a sort of a subgroup within the Vegetarian Society. And again, my understanding is that they refused. So therefore, this group who wanted to establish that particular type of lifestyle felt they had to do something on their own. And I think there are about half a dozen of them in the sort of motivators and shakers of this little movement, of which I think probably Don was the lead spokesman. The story is that Don and Dorothy were at a dance in Leicester in 1944 and chatting about the various options that people had sent in as possible names, some of which were pretty ridiculous. I think there was one called the Beau Mangeurs. They then considered the word vegetarian, and they thought that as part of this journey, in order to live what they felt to be a sort of a purer diet, that taking the step towards vegetarianism was the first step, but taking it to its logical conclusion would be to eschew all dairy products and eggs. And so they took the beginning of the word vegetarian and the end of the word vegetarian, so VEGAN, and they put the two together. It was about the treatment of animals, and I think just after the war, when things within the farming industry began to become more industrialized as well, I think that began to be so much more important a driver. These days, I think the rise in the popularity of vegan movement has got multiple drivers. There's certainly the animal welfare treatment. There's also, importantly, the environmental treatment, as well as the perceived health benefits. Don was responsible for writing single-handedly what became the Vegan News, which he wrote and typed, and before the days of a photocopier, he'd sort of run it off on whatever system that they had then for duplicating, and put everything in envelopes and send it. It's all very, very labor intensive on his behalf. I think it just began to grow very slowly, and then, as you know now, it's growing sort of exponentially. I mean, it was extraordinary because in 2005, when he died, he was, and in the sort of 4 or 5 years before that, he was getting birthday cards being sent to him, courtesy of the Vegan Society, who would then forward them on. And these cards were from all over the world, and he was just absolutely amazed at what the impact was in there. The majority of them do, because I've got a little piece on the website about Donald, but they have to be careful that I don't want this to become a sort of centre of pilgrimage, because that's certainly not what Don would want either. I think the majority of people who come here know that this is his house, but for some who don't, and they are vegans, there's quite a sort of emotional reaction, really.